Hello everyone, Eb here with Tech Motorsports.
Mason, also with Tech Motorsports.
And so part two, let's go ahead and call it part two of this E30 build wheel that we got with another S65. Now where we left off last time, but we did finally finalize the front cross member with the power steering rack. As you can see, these are the two little bad boys that's gonna hold it. Now, we had to move it back and forth, kind of figure it out in one spot because the S65 has the front sump as well. So we had to trying to keep it in there, and we want to make it easier to remove. Unfortunately, you can't pull it outward. You have to pull it to the side and then get it out because
it's not too bad, but yeah, I just kind of got to go to the side a little bit and then rotate it down, but it doesn't work, so.
Yeah, so not 100% done yet, but what we're going to end up doing is this one is going to hold a couple of brackets for the skid plate that we're going to install at a later point, which will be, in all honesty, way down towards the end. We did install the front coilovers. We did lower them down so that we can kind of get an idea with the engine already in there and all the weight on the car to see the distance between the ground and the lowest portion of the engine. And we do have to say it is low, but the coilovers up front are pretty much low. So we are going to raise it up a little bit. I think I'm back and forth with the customer on what wheels we're going to use. If he's going to use with 17s or 18, and that kind of gives me a better idea on where we're going to put these bad boys. But as long as it fits with the current wheels, we should be okay if he goes 18s. But yeah, so that's one thing that definitely have to keep our eye on. Now, the engine cannot go any higher. It is literally a very small gap from the plenum to the hood. So, what we had to end up doing is originally I gave myself a little bit more room. Once we got everything in there, I decided to bump it up some more. So what we're going to end up doing is we're going to add more material here to make this section here where the motor mount sits a little bit.
Raise it up just a little.
Raise it up. Now I decided to do it here because what that's going to end up doing is giving Mason and I more clearance for the line that connects to the power steering rack right here in this little cup area. So it looked great. I'm glad that we got the car on all wheels. We were able to roll it into the AC shop. My dear Lord, it was so hot. There was just those days, no airflow. We had fans, but it is
blowing hot air.
It was just hot. So we're glad we were really pushing ourselves to get it to this point so we could be a little bit more comfortable.
We can move it around.
Yeah. Yeah. So now our next step is going to be removing and getting some more clearance. Now from the last video, like I said, the transmission is very tight in the tunnel. When we looked at, you could get me in the view. Yes, there are sections that we're going to go ahead and remove, and those sections are going to be the OEM additional, not bracket, but the technically the mounting points for the transmission itself, the transmission crossmember. That whole section is going to be removed, and it's going to give me more clearance on this side of the transmission, on the other side as well. So that should help us without even having to go and cut into the floor / tunnel and make some adjustments on that. Hopefully by just removing that section, that'll give us enough clearance. Like anything, like we said before, this is going to get AC and stuff. So we've already started with the notching of the AC section. We will finish that up. Now, as anything, we start getting everything together and start realizing, okay, what items are we going to use? And I'm talking about radiator. So I was thinking about utilizing the radiator that was in there just because of the mounting point and the space that I was going to have. On the previous E30 S65, we did use an E90, but the engine was pushed back a little bit more further to where I had enough room to use the electric fan from the E90, E92, which is very nice. But by the time we added some of the hoses to the front where the oil filter housing is at, she was tight. She fits, but she was tight. So This one, I'm probably am gonna go with the E90, E92 radiator. We are gonna have to hack and adjust the front section right here where the radiator support is at, only because the hoses pretty much are in the middle of, well, the hose connections to the radiator are pretty much in the middle of us installing it. Yeah. So we're gonna try to install the boot. It's dab in the center of it, so you know I'm not gonna move that out of the way. So, and also the lower section of the E30 radiator, it's gonna sit right in front of the AC compressor, and it's just gonna be tight to where it'll fit better if we use E90, E92. So yeah, so we have to do some modifications in there. So like I said before, what we're gonna do is now we're gonna start hacking more of the car and making some more room, and we're gonna go through all that. And so we're gonna put this baby off to the side and pick you up. Yeah, so now at this point, we're just gonna cut some stuff away, plate it, kind of like the first one that I did, and we'll pick you up here soon. So stay tuned. All right, so what we have done is we were doing two things. Mason was concentrating on finalizing the section there for the engine rail for the
compressor.
For the AC compressor. So did the same thing as I did with the previous E30. Was we cut out a slot, and because there is an additional support, I guess, on the inside of the rail. So we did cut into that section, so that way we were able to
slot it over, and then I can still weld through that center support.
Yeah, so that way we have the correct, that way she's strong. So we end up doing that. And then also, which we'll touch base, we did finish creating the mounting on the side of the engine rail. We did create that as well. We will look at that once we get the engine pulled out. But before we pull the engine out, I was working on something else, and what I was working on was the gear selector. It's trying to put this in the right spot. So we got the dash temporarily in place in the center console. And of course, I already knew that the height of this was going to be an issue, even if I put this just on top of the tunnel itself. I was correct. It stuck out like a sore thumb. So what I ended up doing was I created this little bad boy. So I kept the shape of that and cut this out. So this is going to be a tray. I'm going to weld this into the chassis, and this should bring it down enough to where the shifter itself with the little cover on it is going to be flush with the OEM or really close. So here's the section that's already been cut out. So this one is going to sit in there. I'm going to tack weld this into place. Here is my space. This is the space that I'm allowing from this pan or this section here to the glebo. So just imagine it's going to go like this. This space, it's 5 and an 1/8. Yeah. So I was really wanting it to be a little bit tighter, but I want to give itself enough room that the transmission should not be moving that much. So plus when you look around, there are some tighter tolerances just in everywhere else. But so yeah, so that's what I've got going on with that one. I have already trimmed down the OEM boot. I am still keeping the gasket that's on there. The section in the back here, I went ahead and cut that plastic piece off because what's going to end up happening is when I put it inside it or put it in its little home, it's going to go up like this, and then I will still have the rubber boot to go in there so it could seal that compartment. So right now I am going to tack weld it in place. I am not going to fully weld it until a little bit later, until I am happy with how everything else goes. So right now our next step is we're going to drop this bad boy again. I don't know how many times we've already done it, but
I stopped counting.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's going to end up happening. And yeah, we're going to get that in place, and then what we're going to pick up, and I will show you what we're going to weld, so you can kind of see the little slots, and also the brackets that we add, and additional brackets that we added to the front subframe, so that way to make sure that it's going to be able to withstand and hold the weight of the S65. So pick you up in a second. Okay, so this is what it's gonna look like. As you can tell, she sits in her pretty now. She's been tacked into place, and yeah, man, she doesn't stick out like if trying to place it on top of the tunnel. So I'll be putting a plate over that, and then that will snap into place. So not too bad. I actually like how it turned out. So let's go ahead and pull this engine out, and let's take a look at the engine rail. Okay, so here we are, the engine is out. We're at the front subframe, and this is the additional bracing that we did for the subframe. So we got that secured into place. What we end up doing is once we started cutting this section out, we probably did, what was it, Mason? 2 inch by 2 inch? Something like that?
I think it was 2 inch by 1 3/4.
Something like that. We end up cutting that section out. Once we try to cut just the top section, we found that there is another section behind it. I thought it was a little bit higher up, but it actually dipped down again. So what we ended up doing is it was 2 pieces, the internal section and the outer section. And we welded the internal back in because I didn't want a weak point. By doing that, then we drilled a hole where the nut was gonna go through, and we welded the outer plate to the nut, or the nut to the outer plate, and then welded the outer plate on, and that's what we've got. So for the AC section, you can see this is it's all tack welded. You can see right here, this is kind of where we notched and have that center internal brace that we wanted to make sure we get and bite into, so we could keep the strength of the rail. So yeah, so now what we're going to end up doing is just going to go ahead and weld this completely. We're going to go ahead and close this up as well. This is the same thing I did with the first E30. Just touch base the other E30. I still have to do these to that chassis. So yeah, I'll pick you up here in a bit, and maybe the engine will be installed, and with the AC compressor right here. So I'll pick you up here in a few. All right, so basically finished all this up right here. So she's been all welded in and sanded, and we got the corner here as well. What I'd like to be able to do is also show you something I might have mentioned previously when I first started the project, and it's just the way the steering column, yeah, the way it just went through the chassis. So let's take a look at that real quick. Okay, so as if you could see, yeah, the last install, they just cut down on the steering column, and there's no bracket, no nothing there. So when you would press the clutch in, the steering column would move up and down. It was just insane, and how someone just decided that was a good idea to get something to work. But anyways, that's gonna have to be completely taken care of. So that will be at a later point once we get further along with the project. Another thing that I wanted to mention as well, as I stated previously, to get a little bit more transmission, the DCT clearance. What I ended up doing is I removed the transmission bracketry that came with it. So all I did is just drill out the spot welds. It gave me some additional space for the transmission on the sides. And there might be just a little bit of massaging that I have to do on just certain areas. Actually, there's only really 2 areas that I was really having an issue with. But yeah, so now that's been taken care of. I'm gonna have to plug weld all the drill spots on the chassis as well, which sucked because I was hoping that the spot welds were on this here and not on the actual chassis themselves. But unfortunately, if you paid attention when I showed you the shifter, you could see there's a bunch of holes that were drilled out. That was because of that. So now we're gonna have the other fun part. Again, we're gonna reinstall the engine. Now we're gonna start working on a couple of little other items with the tranny as well, but also seeing if I'm gonna end up using the E90, E92 M3 radiator. I have one here from the other car, and yeah, I'm just going to see if I can make it work. And one thing we end up doing as well is I end up bracing the suspension up front. The coilovers were set low, so I went ahead and adjusted that a little bit just to see, to check the ground clearance. So yeah, I'll pick you up here in a sec. We finished installing the radiator support, and we did decide to use the E90 E92 radiator, pretty much the same thing as the other one. So by doing so, pretty much went the same route, same direction. This section in here, the OEM was in good condition. The other one was rusted out, but I wanted it nice and seamless, so I went ahead and just cut that piece out and welded a new piece on there. So I do have my dimple dies here for airflow where the radiator's at, and I also do have it towards the bottom because the radiator sits a little bit lower than this beam. And then I have some towards the bottom of the tray, so that way it drains water out, or any water that sits in there. I also went and on this one, I dimple dyed this section here on the OEM structure. So again, I could get more airflow. Let me show you that real quick. I'll bring the camera around front. So with the E90 radiator, I'll go ahead, since I got it right here, I'll go ahead and get this one in place. And it sits right in the tray. All right, so as you can see, I am using the SPA electric fan that came with the car. I did not have enough room between the radiator and the engine to install the E90, E92 electric fan that technically comes in the chassis. Not enough room on this one. Like I know I've said it a couple times already, that the engine on this car is not as further back as the first E30 that I've been working on. So we end up creating this bracket here so that we could go ahead and have this puppy installed nice and slim. I was able to position the electric fan pretty much right in the right spot where it's not going to interfere with any of the pulleys or anything of that sort. And it's going to give me enough space for the oil cooler adapters for the oil filter housing area. So the other thing, once we got this finished, we jumped up to the next thing, and that was the dipstick C-notch. So we went ahead and got that taken care of. Now when we put the engine in, there's plenty of room all the way around it, and that looks beautiful. And let's jump on to the next big thing that we end up doing. Because we were in the engine bay, we just figured might as well go ahead and knock out as much as we can. So let's get to the bigger portion of what I was technically working on, or what we were technically working on, and trying to. All right, this is end of part 2. Mason and I just got carried away on a lot of the stuff that we were doing and did not get a chance to do a lot of the footage in between all that. My apologies. We kind of got behind on the whole car, like I stated before on one of the previous videos. So we were just trying to kind of run through it, and at one point, I would forget to put the camera up and kind of go through it. But what I'm going to end up doing is for the motor mounts, tranny mounts, I'm going to go a little bit more in depth on that here soon, once I'm able to remove those items off the car because they're bolted on. But I'm going to go ahead and get that done. So in case anybody's wondering that they wish I would have paid more attention to that, I kind of will go through that with closer footage and pictures and video of the brackets themselves and any other stuff. So yeah, like always, guys, thanks for watching. Help the channel out by doing so. You got to hit that like and subscribe button. So hope to see you in part 3.